All right, welcome to Marxisms. I'm back with another video. Please like and subscribe and share if you like. Do not hit notifications. It's just annoying. Anyway, I wanted to talk about. I already talked about fascism. I don't want to get into communism or Marxism too much because I nobody really. I don't think it really serves anybody to be a purely communist country. Communist countries have a tendency to be dictatorships, which is what you really see. There's really never been a true communist country, and just like there's never really been a true capitalist country. It's y- all governments have certain things in common, and you kind of have to have a blending of things. I mean, even in our country, which we're considered to be a capitalist country, but we have aspects of socialism. When you think about it, the whole interstate highway system, which was built on a combination of private enterprise and the government and oversight. And it works well. The government maintains the roads through taxes and and then also the state supplements some of that for the roads that are within their jurisdictions, and then of course you have all the side roads and things like that to lead into the cities and city streets and all that nonsense that make up our whole system. Same with railroads. I mean, it took the government procuring land to build the railroads that we have today, starting with the transcontinental rail. Well, not starting with it, but there were other railroads as well. But the main one being the transcontinental railroad, which connected the east and west coast. These are kind of important things. Fire departments, the public school system, which is in the Constitution. They talk about having a compulsory education system and therefore paid for in part by the government. And with, state and local oversight and jurisdiction and funding and stuff as well. It's just this mix of things. Um, to start off with the United States, we call ourselves the United States. We call ourselves a bunch of states that are united. And most Americans take that to mean that a state is what we kind of know as a state today. But what they are is they're countries. They're united countries that became one country because under the Federalist Papers, they were just Virginia was a country, Maryland was a country, New York was a country. They were states, like the state of Israel or France or whatever. But what they did was they united under one flag to fight the British, and that's how we became called the United States. Since then, we've abolished the Articles of Confederation and in favor of the Constitution, which creates a central government, therefore making us one state with a bunch of little states with local jurisdiction and what the South used to call states' rights that Republicans now call states' rights, and how those kind of those terms had kind of changed hands over the years. The Republicans now being what the Democrats kind of were, and Democrats now being what the Republicans kind of were. Because let's remember in the beginning that the Republicans, or during the Civil War, the Republicans were the liberal, big government party that supported unions and the abolition of slavery and eventually civil rights. And the Democrats were states' rights. Originally anti-federalists who didn't want a central government, who wanted just to be kind of on their own, and they wanted to hold slaves and all that stuff, and were not for unions in any way. And then eventually they switched sides. I've argued this with people, and they just don't know their history. And now the Democrats are pro-union, pro-civil rights, and they eventually became, the champions of civil rights. It's my other producer. That's the co-producer, Pepper. Um, and huh. And so they really switched sides. The Democrats became the liberals for bigger government and more government regulation. So anyway, uh, what I want to talk about today is social democracy, which is mixed up with democratic socialism, including me. I always mix the two up, and they are similar in some ways, but they're different. I said in my last video that I was more of a democratic socialist, but the truth is I'm actually more of a social democrat, or for social democracy. I'm not a Democrat. Yeah, don't mix that up. I am not a Democrat, as we know Democrats. I am not a Republican, as we know Republicans. I am an independent as far as that goes. So, but what social democracy is, and I'm gonna read this because it's just easier to do than to explain it. Social democracy is a political ideology aiming to balance capitalism with social justice through a strong welfare state, which doesn't mean everybody on welfare. That's not what that means. You could, guess I could look that up for you, but you could also look it up yourself and do your own damn homework for a change. I know if you're MAGA, you're not going to do that. You're going to find a meme somewhere and then you're going to believe what it says, or you're going to listen to some idiot on Fox News who are really all liars anyway. Um, so, advocating for economic and social equality within a democratic, market based system, um, not by abolishing capitalism, but by regulating it heavily, which is what I am actually for. Um, and it supports robust public services like universal health care, education, pensions, progressive taxation, some of this stuff we already have. Um, and strong workers' rights, which I mean, I'm a union man. I was a sheet metal workers union, and I used to argue with these guys. Used to be because I was a Republican, so I was kind of always at odds with them. And it was funny. Somebody wrote an anonymous letter one time to them. I'm just another segue. I always do this, but that's what happens when you have ADHD and you have a lot of thoughts in your head. It's funny because. Um, I had one of my business agents call me up and he's going, "Oh, yeah, we know you wrote this letter." And I'm like, "What letter's this?" And he says, "Well, it was anonymous, but we know it was you." And I'm like, "Wait a minute." I said, "Whenever I send you something, don't I always sign it? Don't I always approach you or call you and tell you who I am?" And they're going, "Well, yeah." And I'm like, "Why you think I would write an anonymous letter? That is not me." And I told him, I said, "Look, my ego is way too big not to sign a letter that I wrote if it's a good letter." And he laughed and he goes, "Yeah, that's probably true." And I said, "Yeah, it really is." I said, "I didn't write that letter." I said, "If I do write a letter to you, I will definitely sign it. I will Hancock that motherfucker, you know." But anyway, but I'm they would love me today, but anyway, but I mean I always supported the union and I always supported a lot of these principles anyway. And then somewhere along the real line, I realized that, I guess I really am for social democracy. Um, it supports robust public services like universal health care, which I am so for, and educate universal education and pensions, progressive taxation, and strong workers' rights. All for those things. See, here's the thing about free education. Everybody's like, "Oh man, pay for your own education." Well, think about it this way: if you had a country where everybody, especially a country as rich as ours, that where we paid for the education, the college education, or vocational education, or whatever you choose to do. Like I would not have done well in an office situation because I love to be in the outdoors. So I became a union sheet metal worker. Where I got good education. I went through a 5-year apprenticeship program, which was college accredited. I also later on went to study civil engineering and land surveying as well. But um, and I had a good job and I had a lot of good made a lot of good money, and I have a pension and all that kind of stuff. 401k, I had good health care. I still have health. I pay for the health care because I'm retired now, but I don't pay as much as probably some people do. It's still a lot though. It's too much. But If you had people educated the way they want to be educated or what they were good at, you would have a smarter society overall. You would have a better educated society that did um, people doing what they wanted to do and making more money and paying more taxes. It would just be so much better for our country. Everybody would be more or less prosperous. You wouldn't have the homelessness per se that you do today. Of course, we have homelessness because um, a lot of it's because of the wars we've fought. You have a lot of mental illness amongst veterans who end up homeless, and a lot of foster kids who end up homeless. Um, but actually, a lot of the people that are homeless were foster kids that tapped out of that system. They aged out. So, but if we had a full-on education, we would just have a smarter society, an educated society, a harder working society, a happier society, and one that paid more taxes. I believe in progressive taxation. I think the rich should pay more. Ronald Reagan did away with that, and we've watched our standard of living tank since then. We have, a situation where the rich are just getting completely and utterly wealthy beyond belief, a small percentage of the people, and then the rest of us are struggling at the bottom. I'm doing okay, but I mean, if I have any kind of healthcare issue that happens, I mean, I pay an enormous amount of money for healthcare, and then when I go in to the hospital or to a doctor's appointment, I end up paying even more. I mean, and it's we're the only civilized country or industrialized country where people go bankrupt. We have 500 over 500,000 people go bankrupt a year over healthcare issues. And then we have a lot of people that die because of healthcare issues, which is why our death average rate of living is going down compared to other countries. We have a lower standard of living than social democratic countries. We have less freedom. They're increasingly everybody always says, "Oh, look at the models of socialism; they don't work." Venezuela, Cuba, who we have sanctions against, so of course they're not doing well. And then the Soviet Union, which was a dictatorship. Now China, even though they have a communist country and they are heavily burdened by a punitive oligarchical type of government. They don't have a lot of freedom per se, but they do have kind of a capital. They do have a capitalist economics, and they're killing us. But uh, so they have one aspect of that that's good. So they're bad examples of communism is what they are. None of them are really communists. I mean, communism is an economic system, not a government system. First of all, I'm talking about an economic government system here where you have free markets because free markets do work. Other countries have tried not having free markets and just doing the socialist part. Well, it didn't work. But then now we look at our country, and if you think our country works well, you're kind of brainwashed because I worked at Sprouts for an example, and others like grocery stores and things like that. And now you didn't have this in the sheet metal workers union. There were no sheet metal workers on welfare, but a lot of the employees I had, these are working people raising families who are on welfare because they don't make enough money to make ends meet. So you shouldn't be working and then have to collect welfare. So everybody thinks that people on welfare are just people that are lazy and sitting on their ass, not doing anything, and just getting money from the government. Well, that's not the case. The majority, overwhelming majority of people that are on welfare actually have jobs, sometimes more than one. And it's hard to find a full-time job, especially without that education. So if we had free education, you'd have people that were able to go out and get good jobs. We wouldn't have to bring people in from India and China and everywhere else to do higher tech jobs that require people that are good at math. And I'll tell you what, I do those little simple math problems on Facebook all the time where people are where they have like 16 divided by, well, let's say I just did one today. It was 15 divided by 3 plus uh I don't know, 6 times 2 or something like that minus 4. I mean, I'm just making that up. But you go through there and the people that get that wrong, it's because that's simple math. um and then people questioning, well, since there's no parentheses, I guess you just add it do it straight across. It's like, well, no, you don't. People, there's people that get it right, of course, but there's so many people that don't. It's frightening. That is simple math. Okay, here's how it works. You do anything in parentheses first, and then anything that is, and if there's no parentheses, you do everything that is um, um, multiplication or division separately, but first. So if you have them separated by like a plus sign, you ignore the plus sign for now, and you do the multiplication and subtraction. Then you add them together, and then you do the subtraction or addition that happens to take place later if it does. It's pretty simple, and people don't know the rules. I mean, there's people saying ridiculous things like, "Oh, well, there's more than one right answer." There's not ever more than one right answer in math. There's only one right answer, and that's it. And it's by doing it the proper way. There's a reason why you do it this way. It's because that's what actually works. So we would have a better class of people who knew stuff if we had free education. All right. So welfare state. What that means is provides extensive social safety nets, health care, housing, unemployment benefits, and public services. A lot of those things we have now. They're not very good, but so we kind of already have that to a point. But people talk about a welfare state thinking that a welfare state means everybody's just gimme, gimme, gimme. Well, no, it's not. People work hard, and then they barely can survive. That's that's what capitalism brings you. That's not good. I don't want to work for some of these guys. Some of these people work two jobs. It's hard to get it. Like I said, it's hard to get a full time job. What the companies want to do, it's like, okay, I'm going to give myself an example. Okay, I'm retired, and I decide, well, I'm new to this area, so I want to go and work someplace. I'm very good at customer service. I love being a checker. I love talking to people. I'm pretty good with math and stuff like that. So my biggest problem is I'd make mistakes when I'm talking to people, and I usually it's like an error on the computer. But if I made a mistake, but and actually, I made a few when I was on when I had COVID. I had a little bit of brain fog afterwards, and I told them at work. I said, "Look, you guys worked me too many hours. First of all, so let's you know cut my hours back so that I can um, end up doing a good job and then not be overburdened." But they had me working full time pretty much without being full time. So they couldn't have to pay me benefits or anything, but they're paying me 38 hours or having me work 38 hours. But I didn't want to. I wanted to work about 25, 26 hours. 26 hours ended up being perfect when I had a week like that because I don't need it. Other people were begging for more hours and they're giving them to me. Anytime somebody quit or called in sick, I got their hours. And it's like, I don't want them. Give them to the people that want them, that need them. So what they do is they make you part time, and then they use you the way they want to use you. And yeah, Sprouts, yeah, you do this. Everybody does, unfortunately. So they're all part of the problem, though. So what would happen is I'd get 38 hours. I wouldn't be full time. I'd be part time, working full time hours, and and I wasn't on welfare because I have a pension and I have a 401k that I'm able to draw from, and so I'm not on any kind of assistance, and that's just I'm just in the lucky situation, but um, all my fellow employees they'd work. It's hard to get a full time job, so they would just work part time, and then they'd work part-time somewhere else, and ultimately they'd end up being late for work because they were at their other job, which was unfair to me because here I am, I'm, on time every day, early. I'm usually a half hour, at least 15 minutes early every day. Oh, been doing that all my life. And then not because it's their fault. They end up coming in late, 15 minutes late. So that means I have to stay, 15 minutes later that I don't want to. And I'm already working hours I don't want. So they're not doing stuff to help other people. So they just completely ignored me wanting less hours. They completely ignore anybody wanting more hours. It's a control thing. That's all it could be. I know they wanted me there. I'm good with customer service. I was great with the customers. I still shop at the store and walk through there, and people going, "Oh, I wish you still worked here. You were great," and all this stuff. They could always count on me when things were busy. I was the guy that could get the line through, and I'd had people come through my line, and they'd say, "Your line was the longest, but I knew you'd get through it faster, so I'm still out quicker than I would have been." And yeah, I mean, that's because I work hard, but sure, you know? And, my generation, we have, I remember when I was a kid and the older generation's just like, yeah, God, you kids are terrible. I think when you get older, you get a little more serious about things and get a little better at it. But anyway, um, people on welfare are not jobless. People on welfare, for the most part, are working people who just can't find a really good job. I mean, where I live, there aren't a lot of there are some really good jobs, NASA and Boeing and stuff like that. But you have to have the education to work at a place like that. And since we don't give education, if your family can't afford it, or you don't want to go into debt, I didn't want to go into debt. My family couldn't afford to send me to college. And I didn't want to go into debt, so I joined the union. And I wanted to work outdoors anyway. I wouldn't like being stuck in an office. It wouldn't have been fun for me. I loved being outside. It was just part of the adventure for me. But anyway, they're not on welfare because they're bums. They're on welfare because the system sucks. Capitalism. Okay, so that's your welfare state. So I think we should have free healthcare. I'm willing to pay higher taxes to not pay the $8,000 a year I pay and then in healthcare costs, and then and then when I go to the hospital or the doctors have to pay anyway. You know, not all of it, but still quite a bit. So it's not a good thing. It's not a fair deal. People who live in countries where there's socialized medicine, they often get like a month vacation every year. Which why not? Especially as rich as we are, we should be allowed to. Um, and they have free healthcare. They pay a little higher taxes. So what? It's worth it. I would definitely pay higher taxes, and if I had a wage that enabled me to live, and if I didn't, then to be able to collect a little bit of a subsidy to do that instead of subsidizing businesses like we do. See, that's what I keep saying is that the big companies, the people who are rich, actually get socialism. They don't need it, but they get socialism, and they get it from our tax dollars. And they don't pay their fair share in taxes. You can look at the numbers like, oh, they pay this, blah blah blah. Well, from a percentage point of view, they need to pay a higher percentage because um, it just makes sense. You can look all that kind of stuff up, but why should Elon Musk pay almost nothing in taxes? Which a lot of these companies, they don't even pay taxes because of the tax breaks and loopholes and everything else. That's all socialism. That's a giveaway. That's a giveaway to the rich, not to let's have socialism for the middle class and the poor instead of for the rich. So they all call you a red for being or a communist for wanting to have them pay taxes and you be able to have free healthcare and stuff like that. Well, they get all that stuff. Look at Congress. Every Republican in Congress has socialized medicine. They're hypocrites, and they're just pulling the wool over your eyes. And that's what just makes MAGA dumb when they're pay your own way. And it's like, well, the people you support aren't. Economic regulations. use government intervention to manage markets, reduce inequality, and ensure fair wages, as well as um, um, safety, work safety, and 8-hour days, overtime pay, and all that kind of stuff. That's all should be regulated. Businesses should be regulated. They shouldn't have a free ride to do whatever they want to for a lot of reasons, including um, um, ecological for the environment and stuff. They regularly pull. It's like the oil refineries in the Bay Area. They'd regularly, for the longest time, they would just dump into the bay, um, and then they'd get fined. But the fine was it'd be like finding me a penny for something. It was like they didn't care. It was cheaper for them to pay the fine than it was for them to follow the rules. So let's have some stricter regulations to where they're actually fined for doing stuff. And let's have good regulation that controls these businesses and controls the economy. Democratic means achieves goals through democratic processes, not revolution, often involving cooperation between government, unions, and business. It worked really well with the sheet metal workers union. We had a thing called SMACNA, which was a sheet metal standards that was the businesses and the unions would get together and they would come up with how to do things correctly. Um, and most of the codes are actually based on sometimes usually inferior to our SMACNA codes. SMACNA codes were um, good regulations on how to do the job correctly and efficiently. And we went through 5 years of school to learn how to do this. And we would regularly work with the government and other the businesses, unions, business, and governments to come up with these standards, including safety standards and whatnot. We always had safety training. Every job I went to, the first day, you spent the first couple hours of the day, and depending on sometimes it was more, sometimes it was less, but you'd spend time learning all the safety rules and which was good. It repeated itself job to job, a lot of it, but you learned it and you knew how to work safe. I never had any major injuries in my entire career, 37-year career in sheet metal. I never had any major injuries. Had little injuries here and there, because stuff does happen. I worked on Chase Center in San Francisco, which was the largest job in the nation. It was one of the biggest jobs. It was over $1 billion, and we had zero lost time injuries. And it like we broke the records, and it's because it was all union, and we were all well trained, and we had safety programs and all that stuff. It really works. I mean, it worked great. That was the funnest job I ever worked on too. That was amazing. Anyway, mixed economy, and I've been saying this forever, combines capitalist market principles with public ownership and or strong regulation in key sectors. Just what I just said. Social justice extends democratic ideals of freedom and equality to economic and social life. Everybody's equal. Everybody's the same. Um, uh, no, we're not equal. What that it doesn't mean we're equal in our ability to do certain things, but everybody has something that they can do, and we are all equal in the sense that we all deserve the same rights and privileges and everything else. Um, Center left stance. Key characteristics here occupies moderate positions on the political spectrum, differing from revolutionary socialism. So it's doing things democratically. It's having elections and letting people decide. I hear people often say how the difference between democracy and a republic is based on law, and that democracy is based on majority rule, and therefore the minorities have no rights. and that democracies are short lived in their they always end up becoming dictatorships or whatever. Well, I got news for you. They're kind of interchangeable, a republic and a democracy, because what is it? What's the difference? So we had a republic. We started off with a republic, and were women free? Did they have the right to vote? Did they have a right to have credit? Did they have? Did blacks have the any rights at all? Not really. So that doesn't track. So unfortunately, the laws still were in favor of rich white people or rich white men in particular. So that doesn't really track. Um, the idea that somehow democracy is weak and republic is not, it's not even true, because we don't really have a true democracy or really true republic for that matter. I mean, I guess it's a true republic, but they are interchangeable. There's no such thing as a pure democracy. Even the city states of Greece, which they talk about, these were pure democracies, everybody participated. Well, it isn't true, because a lot of times women, they still had slavery and things like that, and you still had to be a citizen and this, so, and a landowner. So it wasn't really true democracy. So there's never really been that per se. I would say that the original government of humans was democracy, because you had a bunch of cavemen or whatever you want to call them, um, hanging out around by the fire and talking about the hunt the next day and how they were going to do it. And yeah, there was always people that had a little better input than others and stuff like that. Maybe were run faster or threw a harder or javelin or whatever they called them back then, a spear at the woolly mammoth or whatever it happened to be they're hunting. But they found ways to cooperate. That's democracy. Eventually we had kings, and they were inferior governments. Ending up with feudal systems and whatnot. So having socialism, a bit of socialism, is just treating people with humanity and still having a free market economy. So it's a mix of communism, I guess, and um, capitalism. I mean, and there's going to be no perfect mix. They're all a little bit different. But all of the Europeans, I have a list here of all of the countries that have a higher standard of living than the United States of America. Let's see, where is this list? Okay, so here's countries with a higher standard of living than America: Denmark, Sweden, Switzerland, Norway, Canada, Finland, Germany, Australia, the Netherlands, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, Austria, Belgium, Japan, Ireland, France, Luxembourg, Spain, Ireland, Portugal, then the United States. Do they have some problems? When I posted this on Facebook, I had people going, "Yeah, but you have waiting lists for healthcare in Britain. You have waiting lists here, more and more waiting lists here in the United States under our free capitalist system." Um, do they do they have some problems? Yeah. Do we? Yeah. We have a lot of problems. And the thing is none of these countries, they have zero bankruptcies due to not being able to pay your health care. Japan, which is the most capitalist society on earth, has universal health care. We are the richest nation on earth, and we don't. The rich are getting wealthier. I mean, if you follow the news, not CNN or MSNBC, but follow what's really going on. Forget the news media, because we know they're not accurate, or they're not. We know they have an agenda, especially Fox News. Does MSNBC have an agenda and CNN? Yeah, of course, but so does Fox News. Fox News are the biggest liars on the planet. Um, but if you really look at numbers and stuff like that, it's not hard to see that we're not the country of the free, the most highest standard of living or any of that anymore. We were, and there's really good reasons for that. And I think I did a video on that about the Mississippi River and our coastal highway, intercoastal waterways and stuff like that. How we're able to move goods cheaply, more cheaply than any other nation on earth. We have geographical advantages to every other nation on earth, and that is why we are a successful society. And there is no reason why our nation, our society, should not be able to provide decent wages, healthcare, and education, among other things, for our people. We do what we do so that the rich can get richer. The rich get welfare. They get the subsidies. They get all of the tax breaks. And once you have money, you're able to hire people to find those tax breaks and stuff like that. Whereas we don't have, you know, the money to do that. I have a pretty good tax guy, but probably not the same as good as Trump does, or somebody like that, or Elon Musk. But they have everything in their favor, and they get all of these government um, um, uh, contracts and this and that. They get socialism from the government. And then they turn around and tell you that you're a commie if you want an 8-hour workday, or if you don't want to work a couple hours of overtime. You're being buffaloed by the very wealthy who are getting the socialism. They're the socialists. Maybe it's time we got a little bit of socialism. I think you guys need to do a little more research on economics and government systems, and stop believing your Facebook memes and all the very people that are getting rich off of your labor. Um, the people need to control the means of labor and stuff like that, and regulation in this country, not the wealthy, not the Elon Musks or the Amazon dude, or any of them. So that's going to be enough for my soapbox for today. That's 2 videos today. Peace.